every February, right, the world kind of agrees to stop pretending that it's thinking. Because for a while, we just want to be entertained. And we call it sports season. But it's really more like spectacle season, let's be honest. And today we talk about three of those spectacles, okay? So, of course, we talk about the Super Bowl that just happened, the Winter Olympics that are still happening, and a social network that emerges where AI talks to AI and humans are watching what is happening there. Feels like a zoo exhibit, but maybe there's more to it. What is that spectacle, okay? So different stages, same function, and I'll get to that. It's not about who's winning or who's losing, it's more about who gets attention, who gets legitimacy, and who can control the narrative, who decides what's real. Sawadee Cup and welcome to another episode here for the subject about mindful media and communication. And let's dive right into the first part of today's episode, which is, of course, talking about the Super Bowl. Yeah, the Super Bowl used to be one of those last big monoculture events. Yeah, monoculture meaning bringing everybody together to watch it. It's the last synchronized attention ritual, at least in the US. In the US, it's like the biggest event of the year, I think. Globally, people like us who are not in the US, right, we know we watch football games that have way more viewers than actual football games that have way more viewers than the Super Bowl. The World Cup will have way more viewers than the Super Bowl, of course. But for America, it's like the biggest event. And the halftime show with Bad Bunny, of course, was also a very critical moment, so to speak. It's more than just music, right? It's a national identity moment, so to speak. Like, what does it mean to be American? And particularly the side that didn't want him to be here talked about this a lot, like, yes, no English spoken, it's just Spanish, lots of Puerto Rican symbolism, which, by the way, I checked, it's part of the US, but it's really cool. And lots of crossovers with Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, Pedro Pascal, Karol G, and more, right? So even two famous-ish boxers, which was very cool to see as a martial arts fan. But that's not just inclusion, I think. There's more to it. And looking towards from a media perspective, like a media theory point of view, you might even call it managed pluralism, as you will. I will elaborate in a second, right? But it was very interesting to see this movement or this moment coming to fruition, and also seeing, like, of course, the alternative version of it. More on this in a second. But since I always try to add some media theory to the pods, right, when we look at this moment, the Bad Bunny moment during the Super Bowl, which was, by the way, way more exciting, personal opinion, than the game itself, we can look at like a theory that's called the media event theory by Katz and Diane, okay? Will come across you many times if you study media theories or communication theories. And it's basically saying that media events, they suspend critique. Okay, they create like a temporary consensus. And that's what usually everyone was banking on with big events, Super Bowl, Olympics, World Cups, and so on, right? Everyone watches together, comes together, cheers for their athletes, which makes the message feel more natural rather than imposed. You're all cheering for the team you're supporting. In the Olympics, World Cup, you're cheering for your national team most of the time, right? So that it supersedes, it suspends everything else, and it's a unifying event usually. Besides this year, it didn't really feel like it, right? So very interesting. Also, second theory that you are already familiar with, guided board society perspective, right? We know about it. It basically says, in a nutshell, spectacle doesn't argue. There's no arguments to be had about spectacle. You watch it, you get overwhelmed by it, you're taken aback, like, oh my God, wow, this is crazy. Meaning comes from the scale of the spectacle, how crazy, amazing, overwhelming it all is, not from substance. And that's also, again, unifying, because we're all getting blown away by how amazing and all the stars, and look at this, oh my God, I can't believe it. So that's the spectacle, right? So that's usually how the Super Bowl, other big events are being created, are being framed as, are being set up to be, okay? And the funny thing, though, is that now, right, while it should be unifying, that it's kind of like the most political thing in the US is a halftime show. Because apparently politics moves into entertainment. Right? I just watched a clip, and again, I'm not making this too political. I focus on the communication point, not on the left versus right. Again, not American, so you do you. But I just watched a clip of Jon Stewart saying something along those lines, like, lots of people on one side are complaining that it's so divisive and not unifying halftime show because it's only Spanish speaking and such things. And Jon Stewart asks, yeah, but who said that the halftime show act, a music act, has to be the one unifying America? Isn't there another person in America whose job description should include unify America? Very interesting, right? Like, you're all focusing on the entertainment, which is supposed to be entertainment, and now the entertainment is more political than politics. The politics are more entertainment. Crazy times to live in. Interesting. What's interesting to say, though, is I think that the culture war backlash didn't really disrupt the event. Like, I mean, we had the Turning Point USA thing happening at the same time, but there was no real disruption, clash. But it said it, of course. Like, outrage always leads to amplification, and of course, we've seen the outrage being very much amplified as well by certain outlets, of course, right? So I think that's something that is very interesting. But we're not only talking about the Super Bowl, of course. I think that's been discussed a lot. I have an article break it out on my LinkedIn too. If you want to check it out on LinkedIn. I broke it all down, how it's used to divide the nation rather than to unify it right now. So that's something that you can check out if you want to. From a European perspective, because I'm a European living in Asia, so from a European perspective, I'm also looking at the Winter Olympics, of course, happening right now in Italy. And the Olympics are always marketed, and we will talk about this during the World Cup as well. They're always marketed as like unity, peace, sport above politics, right? Meanwhile, and there are lots of protests happening right now in Italy. If you haven't seen, check out the news. Lots of protests are happening about climate contradictions. Who is eligible to be there? Yeah, there's lots of controversy about this as well, like athlete eligibility, like politics. Who can join the Olympics and who can? In some sports, you can have professionals. In some sports, you can only have amateurs. How does that work? And obviously, lots of national branding through aesthetics rather than through policy, right? If someone does well at the Olympics, like, we applaud, we clap. If someone does well, we clap and all those things, and nations are like, look at this is us, we're doing so well, we must be awesome. Sports washing before sports washing was a thing that happened, right? So Olympics, they do not erase politics, but they very much choreograph them, right? So if, again, someone does very well, or it's like certain athletes, they come into the foreground, they step into the limelight, so to speak, and then they try to take away, or they automatically take away from the country's politics rather on than the athlete's performance. I mean, the country's politics is still there. They don't erase them, right? But we just focus on the great performances. It was also very interesting to see that when the Team USA walked out, right, came out through the opening ceremony, that they received so many boos with J.D. Vance in the stands, right? That doesn't happen a lot, because usually people applaud the athletes rather than focusing on the nation's policies. And that's what nations count on, of course. And if you want to look at some theories again, right, while I'm checking my mic is still working, I hope you can hear me well enough. The mics just went off, but it's on again. Okay, so the theory here is that Walter Benjamin, for example, he said something like, politics became aestheticized. That's a hard word for a German. Like, focusing on aesthetics rather than on policies, okay? So power structures, they hide inside beauty, inside ceremony, inside emotion, inside athletic accomplishments. Okay, we only focus on that. We don't focus on anything else. That's what nations count on, right? And we also had the theory called state of exception. State of exception means that, rules that apply for everyone, usually they bend quietly Yeah, some athletes are exceptions, some athletes aren't, and it's all framed as fairness. So it be more inclusive in regards to who can join, for example. But for others, they're more strict. Okay, we're letting more letting ICE agents join as security detail, for example, because the Americans are such a big sponsor or they're such a big delegation that we don't want to upset, for example. Okay, so rules are flexible. We call it state of exception. So meaning like you bend the rules a little to include some, to exclude others. It's all like in the range of like, we're allowed to do that just a little bit so that it's not as obvious, And the Olympics per se, right, by doing all those things, they don't tell you what's right or what's wrong because they don't want to do politics. But the Olympics tell you, like implicitly, what's acceptable because we're still including that nation. We're still including those athletes. We're not banning them for doping 2 years ago. We are not banning the nation for, fueling a civil war, for example. We're not doing so. The Olympics kind of like still, they don't do politics, they say, but they show you we're okay with that. We're not judging them. They're still welcome. So it can't be that bad. Okay, so that's basically what Olympics are doing. And that's kind of like legitimacy without accountability. You're kind of weird, right? So you legitimize something without holding them, others, nations, participants accountable for what they're doing. So it's, as a nation, you're getting prestige without having to make any clear decisions. Yeah, for you as a nation, it's a win. You're like, yeah, cool. Just go represent us, make people like us, make people like our achievements. Then they forget about like our politics. Part 3 of today's podcast, I want to talk about something else. Yet it fits today because it's also about power and narrative somehow. There's this new social network called Moltbook. Yes, you heard it right. It's a AI-only social network. Okay, so welcome to the weird corner of the podcast. Because Moltbook is not about AI intelligence. It's about, I want to say, audience psychology. It's really about like, what do people observe? So the network itself is for AI agents, posting, debating, voting amongst themselves. As a human, you cannot participate. I mean, you can if you find a way around. You can create your own bot and tell the bot what to do. But it's basically just humans watching what's happening and then projecting the human meaning on bot interaction. And the framing and the media that talks about it, the mainstream media, like the media that pushes articles, is usually like, hey, it's emergent AI society, or it's like AI is becoming sentient and things like that. But the thing is, all the AI that's working there, of course, is prompted by someone, right? It was created by someone's AI bot, right? And he had to prompt the bot to create it. So the systems that are at play are scaffolded, right? The autonomy that's apparently there is pretty much, from my point of view, overstated. It's not like this autonomous AI society that's developing there. Mm-hmm. Why it is still interesting, though, is that audience, humans, we're perceiving it as something very interesting. Yeah, we're adding a value to it. Even though stats suggest that maybe, half or whatever, how many people are cosplaying as bots, are programming their own bots to be in there, doing what the humans tell the bots to do. Crazy. But from a media point of view, communications point of view, if you look at like our old friend, Sean Baudrillard, who talked about hyperreality, the simulacra, right? In this time, so the old approach would be like, okay, real life isn't as real as we thought because everybody puts out content that is altered, that is through filters, that is made look better than it actually is, right? It's like the simulation. And then we see that altered version of someone as a reality and we take this altered version as our reality, right? Okay, that's the simulation. Sure. But now the simulation doesn't hide in reality. It replaces it It's an AI simulation. So we react to the performance of those bots acting like an AI society. We don't react to the systems, the human prompts behind it. Okay? So we're taking it for face value, so to speak, rather than thinking about who created it, what are they prompting, and so on. Okay? So that's the simulation part again. We can also talk about Erwin Goffman, like the performance, right? Everyone was wearing a mask. Your front stage persona, backstage persona. Everybody has this, right? Backstage persona is like your vulnerable self and so on. And front stage persona is the persona you put on for the others to see, where others should base their opinions about you on, right? And this is a perfect example, because what really matters isn't what's real, isn't the real self, the real you, the real how the network works. It's what appears to be coherent in public. And what appears to be coherent is AI talking to itself, making decisions, blowing up that network. You might say it's not a reality. We don't care. And so we reached a point right now where AI talking to itself is considered content, but humans talking to each other is like, whatever, toxic, annoying, you name it. The thing is, this Moltbook thing works because it's, and I hate to say this, like post-human. It's inevitable. We had to come to a point where AI starts talking to itself, and I think it's fascinatingly empty. Because there is no real substance to it, but we're so fascinated by it. So this episode was like all over the place. So it's Super Bowl, Olympics, Notebook. All those three examples, they show us how you can convert visibility into legitimacy. They can show us how you replace decision-making with attention management. You just want more attention. Don't make really decisions, you just get more attention. And they show us that we reward performance, how things look like, over substance, how they really are. So different domains, same kind of media logic. Well, in one of my books, I call it spectacle governance. And that's what it's all about. So, wrapping up, right, I don't think we're distracted by all those things because we as people are stupid. We're distracted because distraction is now the system's default output option. Like distract humans at all costs. Don't make them think. And when everything becomes a stage, like front stage, right? Politics, just like everything else, becomes choreography. Truth becomes timing. When do you push what? And attention, and having more, the most attention possible, becomes power. So the real danger is not watching too much. It's that we are watching the wrong things at the right moment.